December 19, 1944. Verdun, France. Eisenhower, looking strained, asks Patton when he can attack north to relieve Bastogne. Patton, without a flicker of hesitation, responds, "December 22, 3 days." A ripple of laughter spreads through the room, several generals amused by what they perceive as Patton's typical bravado. Eisenhower's brow furrows. Patton wasn't joking. And 3 days later, Third Army attacked, exactly as promised, having pivoted 90 degrees through frozen winter terrain in just 72 hours. That was Patton. Not the movie version, not the legend, but the real man. This is about 5 specific instances where Patton's actions made both allies and enemies realize this man simply didn't operate like anyone else. No soaring motivational speeches, no carefully choreographed movie scenes, just the raw decisions that earned him the reputation as the most feared American general of World War II. Let's begin. It's July 1943, during the Allied invasion of Sicily. The initial plan carved the island into 2 sectors. Montgomery's 8th Army would drive up the east coast toward Messina, while Patton's 7th Army was assigned to protect Montgomery's flank. A clear support role, a secondary mission. It was exactly where the British wanted the Americans. Patton read the plan and immediately despised it. Not because it was bad strategy. Militarily, it made perfect sense. Montgomery was Britain's most celebrated general, and the Americans, while skilled, were less seasoned. Let the professionals handle the main objective. But Patton didn't join the army to play second fiddle to anyone. On July 11th, the invasion commenced. Montgomery's forces landed and began their methodical push north toward Messina, carefully building overwhelming force at each position before advancing. Patton, meanwhile, landed on the west coast and promptly began to ignore his orders. Instead of just protecting a flank, he drove his 7th Army straight across Sicily's interior, through mountains and terrain that British planners had declared impossible for armored vehicles. His staff, confused, objected. "Sir, we're supposed to be supporting 8th Army." Patton's response was unequivocal. "We are heading to Messina. The race is on." His forces moved with a speed that stunned everyone. He personally drove to the front, relentlessly pushing his commanders to accelerate. When units reported needing time to consolidate their gains, Patton relieved commanders on the spot. One division commander dared to complain about supply difficulties. Patton simply told him, "I don't want to hear excuses. I want to hear you've captured Palermo." Within days, the 7th Army reached Palermo, a major city that hadn't even been in the original plan. Montgomery was still grinding slowly up the east coast, facing heavy German resistance. Patton then turned his entire army east, now driving toward Messina on a parallel route to Montgomery. The British were furious. This wasn't the plan. Patton was treating the entire campaign like a personal competition. They were right. That's exactly what he was doing. By August 10th, Patton's forces were closing in on Messina, while Montgomery's 8th Army was still 30 miles away. Patton ordered a final desperate push. He wanted to enter Messina first, even if it was only by minutes. On August 17th, at 10 a.m., Patton's lead elements rolled into Messina. He personally entered the city in his command vehicle, stepped out, and waited. Montgomery arrived several hours later. The moment he saw Patton already in Messina, Britain's celebrated general realized he had been beaten. Not by the Germans, but by the American cowboy everyone had underestimated. Patton greeted him cheerfully. "It was a horse race, Monty. I won." Montgomery never forgave him. More importantly, German intelligence took notice. Patton had covered more ground through worse terrain in less time than Britain's best general, and he had done it by refusing to follow the careful, methodical approach that often defined British warfare. Wehrmacht officers filed reports. This American general thinks differently, moves faster, takes risks professionals wouldn't consider. Sicily was the first time German high command marked Patton as truly dangerous. It wouldn't be the last. Fast forward to the spring of 1944. Hitler was consumed by one question: where would the Allies invade France? German intelligence meticulously monitored every Allied general, tracked their movements, and analyzed their significance. A clear pattern emerged. George Patton commanded the 1st U.S. Army Group, stationed directly opposite Calais, the shortest route to Germany. Hitler held a conference with his generals, stating, "The Allies will not waste Patton on a diversion. He is their best offensive general. Where Patton is, the real invasion comes." It made perfect sense. The Allies wouldn't sideline their most aggressive commander during their most critical operation. So Hitler kept his strongest defensive force, the 15th Army, 15 divisions, at Calais, waiting for Patton. On June 6, 1944, D-Day arrived. The Allies landed at Normandy, not Calais. Hitler wasn't worried. This, he believed, was merely the diversion. The real invasion, Patton's invasion, was still coming. Days passed, weeks passed. Patton remained at Calais. Finally, in July 1944, intelligence confirmed the stunning truth. The 1st U.S. Army Group didn't exist. The equipment was inflatable. The radio traffic was fake. The entire force was a phantom. Patton had commanded an army of ghosts. What made this so brilliant was that the Allies had used Hitler's profound respect for Patton as a weapon. They knew German intelligence would think strategically, assuming the best Allied general wouldn't be wasted on deception. That very assumption kept 15 German divisions frozen at Calais, waiting for an invasion that never came, while the real battle raged at Normandy. Patton hadn't fired a shot, hadn't moved a single tank, yet he tied down more German forces than any other Allied general that summer, simply by leveraging his fearsome reputation. This was when Hitler began to fear Patton personally, not because of what Patton did, but because the Allies knew Hitler would react to Patton's mere presence. They had gotten inside his head and used Patton to do it. On August 1, 1944, the ghost became real. Patton activated 3rd Army in France, and Hitler was about to learn what happened when you gave Patton a real army. August 1944. Allied forces had been grinding through Normandy for 2 grueling months, progress measured in hundreds of yards, casualties mounting. Operation Cobra finally cracked the German line. Bradley's 1st Army created the breach. Then Patton exploded through it. The 3rd Army didn't advance. It detonated across France. On August 1st, 3rd Army activated near Avranches. By August 10th, they were 200 miles deep into France. August 25th saw the liberation of Paris. By September 1st, they were approaching the German border, 400 miles in 3 weeks. To put this in perspective, the entire Normandy campaign, from June through July, gained about 50 miles. Patton gained 400 in less time. How? By violating every rule of conventional warfare. Armies are supposed to consolidate gains, secure flanks, wait for supply lines to catch up. Patton did none of this. His units advanced so fast they outran their fuel trucks, so Patton ordered them to capture German fuel depots. When that wasn't enough, he simply borrowed fuel from other Allied units without asking permission. Bradley complained to Eisenhower, "Patton is stealing our gasoline." Eisenhower's classic response, "Is he winning?" "Yes, but—" "Then let him steal." German commanders filed panicked reports, unable to establish any coherent defensive line. Enemy advances faster than we can deploy. American armor observed in sectors not identified as threatened. Patton's location changes daily. Cannot predict next objective. This unpredictability was what truly terrified the Wehrmacht. German military doctrine was built on predicting enemy movements, calculating capabilities, anticipating objectives, and deploying forces accordingly. Patton made prediction impossible. Sometimes he bypassed major cities, sometimes he assaulted them directly. Sometimes he advanced on 3 axes simultaneously. Sometimes he concentrated everything on a single thrust. No pattern, no consistency, just relentless forward movement. One German division commander later recalled, "Fighting Patton was like fighting weather. You knew it was coming, but you couldn't prepare for where it would strike." By late August, Third Army had liberated more French territory than all other Allied armies combined. Wehrmacht officers began asking about Patton at every briefing, not Allied forces generally, but Patton specifically. Because stopping Patton required different planning than stopping other generals. Other commanders followed doctrine. Patton followed instinct. And instinct is impossible to counter systematically. In September 1944, Third Army reached the German border, then stopped. Not because Germany stopped them, but because they literally ran out of fuel. For 1 month, logistics accomplished what the Wehrmacht couldn't, stopping Patton. But German commanders knew this was temporary. Eventually, the fuel would arrive, and when it did, Patton would start moving again. December 16, 1944, 5:30 a.m. Hitler launched his last major offensive. Hundreds of German tanks smashing through American lines in the Ardennes. Entire divisions were surrounded, Bastogne cut off. Allied command was in chaos. On December 19th, Eisenhower called an emergency conference in Verdun. Every senior Allied commander attended. The mood was grim. The question hung heavy in the air. Who could relieve Bastogne? Nobody had a good answer. Pivoting entire armies through winter terrain took weeks. Bastogne would fall long before reinforcements could arrive. Then Eisenhower asked Patton directly, "When can you attack north?" Patton didn't hesitate. "December 22, 3 days from now, with 3 divisions." The room went silent. Several generals thought he was grandstanding, a classic Patton move, making impossible promises to look good. Bradley looked skeptical. Montgomery's chief of staff openly doubted it. Eisenhower said the word that had stung Patton for months. "Don't be fatuous, George." Fatuous, meaning foolish, showing a lack of intelligence. But Patton wasn't being fatuous. He'd anticipated this exact scenario. Before arriving at Verdun, he had ordered his staff to draft 3 separate attack plans for turning Third Army north. The plans were already written, the orders already prepared. All he needed was permission. Eisenhower, seeing Patton was serious, gave it. "Go ahead." On December 22, exactly 3 days after the meeting, Third Army attacked north, precisely as promised. Patton had turned 133,000 men, thousands of vehicles, and 3 full divisions 90 degrees through ice and snow in 72 hours. Military historians still debate how he did it. The answer? He didn't wait for perfect conditions. He created movement through chaos. Units didn't wait for complete orders. They moved on fragmentary instructions. Commanders didn't wait for confirmation. They made decisions at the front. Supply officers didn't wait for approval. They requisitioned what they needed and moved. It was organized chaos, barely controlled pandemonium. And it worked. On December 26, Third Army broke through to Bastogne. The siege was lifted. Hitler's offensive stalled. The last German gamble in the West failed, and Patton proved something crucial. Conventional military wisdom said what he did was impossible. He did it anyway. German commanders filed after-action reports with genuine disbelief. One wrote, "Patton achieved in 3 days what our staff calculated would require 2 weeks minimum." This is when Hitler allegedly made his famous assessment. According to multiple German officers present in the final bunker conferences, Hitler said Patton was the one Allied general who truly understood speed warfare, the one who fought the way Germany was supposed to fight: fast, aggressive, attacking before the enemy could react. Hitler had built the Blitzkrieg. Patton perfected it and turned it against Germany with devastating effect. March 1945. The Rhine River, the last major natural barrier before Germany's heartland. Crossing it would require massive planning, air support, artillery preparation. Montgomery grandly announced he would cross the Rhine with Operation Plunder, an elaborate set-piece battle, complete with an airborne assault, weeks of preparation, and maximum publicity. Patton watched these preparations with quiet amusement. On the night of March 22, 1945, while Montgomery was still preparing, Patton's 5th Infantry Division quietly crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim. No air support, no artillery preparation, no announcement. Just infantry in assault boats crossing under cover of darkness. By dawn, they were on the other side, a bridgehead established. Patton called Bradley. "Don't tell anyone, but we're across." Bradley asked why the secrecy. Patton explained, "Montgomery is crossing tomorrow with massive fanfare. Let him have his moment." On March 23, Montgomery launched Operation Plunder with overwhelming force. The crossing succeeded. Press coverage was extensive. Churchill himself watched from the riverbank. That afternoon, Patton called Bradley again. "Brad, for God's sake, tell the world we're across. I want the world to know 3rd Army beat Montgomery by 24 hours. The announcement went out. The press learned Patton had crossed the Rhine the night before Montgomery, with a fraction of the resources, without elaborate planning, while Montgomery was still rehearsing. But Patton wasn't finished. He drove to his pontoon bridge over the Rhine, walked to the middle, stopped, then unzipped his fly and urinated into the river while photographers captured the moment. When asked why, Patton grinned, "I've been looking forward to this for a long time." This wasn't just Patton being crude. It was calculated psychological warfare. He'd beaten Montgomery across the Rhine, beaten him quietly, efficiently, with minimal fuss, then made sure everyone knew it, and urinated in Germany's greatest river to punctuate the point. German commanders who read the reports understood the message. Patton wasn't just crossing rivers. He was humiliating Germany while making it look easy. This is why Patton terrified the Wehrmacht more than any other Allied general. Not because he had more resources, not because he was necessarily smarter, but because he operated on pure aggression and refused to be constrained by what professional soldiers said was possible. 5 moments. 5 times Patton did what nobody thought possible. He raced Montgomery across Sicily when he was supposed to play support. He fooled Hitler with a phantom army by weaponizing his own reputation. He blitzed 400 miles across France while other armies measured progress in hundreds of yards. He turned an entire army 90 degrees in winter when experts said it would take weeks. And he crossed the Rhine quietly, beat Montgomery, then urinated in it for emphasis. These weren't accidents, weren't luck, weren't exaggerations. These were calculated decisions by a general who understood something most professionals didn't. Speed is violence. Aggression creates opportunity. Unpredictability is a weapon. Patton terrified the Germans because he fought the way they were supposed to fight, but faster, more recklessly, with less concern for conventional limitations. He frustrated the British because he kept beating their best generals while ignoring their careful doctrines. And he frustrated American command because he won battles while violating every rule they tried to impose. Was he perfect? No. The slapping incidents, the Hammelburg raid, his mouth, his ego. But was he feared? Absolutely. Because when armies needed someone to do the impossible, they called Patton, and he delivered every single time. Real history is better than the myths. These moments actually happened. No Hollywood exaggeration needed.